Welcome back to Road Gang Radio. Join Jimmy Mack and Lindsay Lawler's Gang of the Airwaves by subscribing to Radio Nemo on YouTube.
We celebrate all kinds.
Make it official. After all, if you're listening, you're already in the gang. The Road Gang.
Oh, that's darn tootin' right, Claire Marie. Ain't that right, Jimmy Mack? Because today we're talking about Nemo in a different light.
In very, very different light, by the way. If you have the audacity to listen on Odyssey, if you've given your heart to iHeart, if you're yakking it up on YouTube, by the way, you can participate in any conversation that way. We tend to leave phone lines open, but if you do call, make sure you're listening to what the guest is actually talking about. That, by the way, I'm talking to new people out there. Our friends who are with us, Dre, they already know. Yeah. They know the drill. They call about that kind of stuff all the time. I'm really excited about this next guest. By the way, this would have been for me, I read it this week, this would have been for me great summer reading. Oh, wait, it's New Orleans. It's August. It's still summertime. Charles Lachman is an author and a storyteller, and we are absolutely thrilled to welcome him here this morning. We're talking about his book, Codename Nemo, and I'll get to that in a second. But he, by the way, Charles, is widely recognized as one of the top producers in the news magazine genre. Charles has overseen Inside Edition's growth into the longest running and most honored series of its kind. Under Charles's leadership, the show has achieved unprecedented ratings for America's most enduring magazine, news magazine, with an intriguing balance of human interest stories, hard-hitting investigative reports, and celebrity and pop culture features. He has guided Inside Edition to a unique niche in the syndicated news magazine genre. By the way, Dre, it's a piece of programming genius. I know a little bit about programming, and it actually is racked, packed, and stacked. It manages, I think, in some ways, to combine factual, hard-hitting stuff with sort of the familiarity of a local news broadcast, but with a great deal more polish and a great deal more execution. It's really sits in a beautiful place. He's written a number of history books, one of which we're talking about today. He's the author of The Last Lincolns, The Rise and Fall of a Great American Family. He is also an author of A Secret Life, an investigative biography of President Grover Cleveland, which the New York Times says punctured previous books about Cleveland, very misunderstood president. And the Christian Science Monitor called that book a blend of sharp detective work. The thing that he does, and I'm going to let him talk for a long time, don't worry. The thing that he does so great is that he is able to balance, much like the work that he produces on video, he is able to balance really clean, straightforward, tactical, logistical realities, truth, with still allowing the thing to move forward at a brisk clip and at a compelling pace. And this is the tale, Codename Nemo, of a task force hunting for a behemoth under the Baltic on the eve of the greatest invasion of all time. It is our absolute pleasure to welcome Charles Lachman, the author of Codename Nemo. Welcome aboard to Nemo Nation and Road Gang Radio and RadioNemo.com. You are an official member. Good morning.
Thank you so much for having me. Great to be here, and I appreciate the invitation. I think all my future books will have Nemo in the title, so I'll get a re-invite.
By the way, my friend, any book you write, given the topics you've covered and given the fact that we've got so many men and women out there who are history buffs, big history buffs, making their way down the byways and highways. We have one of our listeners, I kid you not, who has 600 audio books under his belt. Many of those recommendations come from us, and we are pleased about this. This is a great story, and I wanted to ask you a question that I alluded to at the top. You've got two jobs here. You have got to logistically and tactically and strategically follow a number of players in this game, while and also lay out who the players are, set an entire map, outline the world this exists in, and then still, while keeping it all clear, keeping it moving forward. So I think it's a good place to start. How do you achieve that balance? Because I've read a number of great tactical books on Midway, for instance, where I've been left kind of dry because they have to go through all the stuff. You create the balance. Talk to how you do that.
Well, I appreciate that endorsement. I think that's what I do. I love history. I read lots of history books for pleasure, and I love the facts of history. But I think that a lot of these books are written for the world of academia, which is great. It's necessary. My books are written for the general audience. I want to write a book that will be, as you point out, fast-paced and energetic. I don't want people to stop after page one and say, I'm not going to be able to get through this. I need the power and punch and energy. I want to create the excitement that these young men had when they captured this German submarine. I want that to come out of the book. I want the readers to seem as if they're already in the action. And that creates a level of excitement and drama that I think is unique in history books. But at the same time, it all has to be very factual. It has to stand up to historical scrutiny. But because believe me, there are a lot of people out there who read books and can't wait to point out the slightest flaw in facts.
By the way, I have a funny story that you will relate to. So we were doing some work for the World War II Museum, and we were doing a production about the Battle of Midway. And a photo got taken of the costume designer getting the men ready. She had not put their ties in place yet. She was still kind of looking at stuff. There was a guy on the cover whose tie went below his belt. The number of letters to the editor from people who were like, that tie is in the wrong place, was unbelievable. The letters that we got, the people who care about this stuff care about it right down to the particulars. And so you have
got that right. It's the attention to detail is extraordinary, and you really have to appreciate that and respect that.
Yeah. So I want to talk about literally here. There's some really great larger-than-life characters, and I always love discovering new larger-than-life characters. You know, there's famous people like, I brought up Midway. It's a passion of mine. You know, Wade McCluskey always kind of percolates in my brain. I did not know Gallery. I did not know the story of Gallery. And you kind of throw us in the middle of stuff with both the U-boat and then, of course, with the task force 22-3. Can you kind of talk about one of the men that sits at the center of this, Daniel Gallery, and kind of give us a little backstory on him?
Sure. Gallery is a great forgotten hero of the U.S. Navy. He was the son of a Chicago lawyer. Two of his brothers were also naval officers. In fact, the three Gallery brothers all achieved the rank of Rear Admiral, which is the first in Navy history. And the third brother was a Catholic priest in Chicago. And he was a graduate of the Annapolis Academy and served on several ships as an ensign. And then he transferred to Navy Flight School in Pensacola. But he always dreamed of commanding a great aircraft carrier. But at the beginning of World War II, fate and the U.S. Navy, he found himself based in Iceland, which he found to be a very cold and strange land. He was a great leader. His men really respected him. His main mission in Iceland was hunting and killing Nazi U-boats who were operating in the waters off the coast of Iceland. And but he dreamed of becoming a aircraft carrier because it combined his skills as a ship commanding officer with his skills as a naval aviator. And then finally that happened in 1943 when he was given the command of the USS Guadalcanal.
That, like I said, that story to me is like, there are things that, and I wasn't like, how did I not know about this? Because it's your job to kind of let people become aware of this sort of character. The other thing is, too, is that geographically you're playing in a very strange world that a lot of people who have not served, or particularly haven't served in the Navy, don't understand. Yes, the North Atlantic, the Baltic, all the places that we kind of talk about over the course of the book, these are wide open spaces, but they're also very contained because for the first time since the naval battles of 1812, we're talking about search and seizures. I mean, a lot of this stuff, which had not been part of the American sort of reality and sort of anybody's reality, it's a very different kind of naval warfare that you're looking at here as opposed to the Pacific where he ends up. That's wide open spaces and great distances. This is this is as close as you get to close quarter fighting in boats in the entire war. Is that fair, given what I was reading?
Yes, totally. Your knowledge of World War II is very impressive. Yes, when the Captain Gallery and his task force seized the U-505 Nazi submarine, it was the first time. It was the first seizure of an intact enemy warship in battle since the War of 1812. And it's so remarkable because when I'm jumping a little bit ahead of the story, but when the task force surrounded the German U-boat, they called out on the loudspeaker of the ship, away boarding party, which was a command not heard since the War of 1812. When in the old days, when you swung, it's like Captain Blood. When you swung onto a pirate ship and seized it, it was like that in a sense. In this case, the boarding party boarded a whaleboat and zoomed across about 3,000 feet to the U-505, and that's when they boarded it and seized it.
By the way, anybody who reads this is going to be reminded of Run Silent, Run Deep, of course, Hunt for October, Das Boot, except all this happened. All that we're talking about actually happened here. And I was kind of wanted people to know with the ship searches and seizures, and remember the book opens up, not you remembering, but the book opens up with actually Americans on the receiving end of this. Talk to people about the value of what it meant to get a hold of one of these ships. The U-boat in particular, of course, looms large, but what it meant to actually seize these ships, about the intelligence that it gives way to, because speaking of intelligence, we're getting to the big thing here, aren't we?
Right. Well, the point of seizing a Nazi U-boat on the high seas was to seize it intact. Other U-boats had been seized, but it was in the aftermath. They had been blown up, or when they were taken over, all the equipment and secret coding machines had been destroyed by the German crew members. What made this unique is that when they boarded U-505, they found two Enigma machines, and I'm sure a lot of your viewers know what that is. It's basically a cipher device that was used to protect military communications. It looked like a futuristic typewriter. It had keys that you type with, and each time you hit a key, it typed a letter, and a light would go on behind the box. And behind the box was a kind of a spaghetti of wires and a electromechanical rotor mechanism that scrambled all the letters of the alphabet into gibberish. And so you not only see, but the point of the Allies already had an Enigma machine, which they had seized the prior missions. But the value of seizing U-505 was that they not only got the latest model of the Enigma machine, but they got the Nazi code books. And to read an Enigma message, you needed the secret code. The Allies, through the work of Professor Turing, who I'm sure a lot of your viewers are aware of, had deciphered the Nazi code, but it took hours and hours and hours of computer time to discover what the codes meant. Now that the Allies had possession of the Nazi code, they could read it instantaneously. So the Germans considered their code to be unbreakable. But with the possession of the code books, they could read it as soon as the messages were sent out. And this was particularly crucial because U-505 was seized on June 4th, 1944, which every student of history will know was 2 days before D-Day. So it was a critical time in the Allied war effort, and it gave them invaluable intelligence material to work with.
What is really interesting about it too is that it's one more reminder that once Omaha and Utah beaches are hit, the ball game is over. And I don't mean that the decision has not been made about how the world will turn, but there's no more planning to do. So the last-minute planning and the last-minute details and the little bit of last things that arrive in regards to intelligence on the eve of D-Day, each one becomes more crucial. And it's a great reminder that despite the fact of the focus of what was happening on those beaches, so much more was going on. Forget about the Pacific. So much more was going on, not just in Italy, but north of what was going to end up happening, on the beaches of Normandy. And it's a really great reminder of that. Let's shift sides now, because one of the things you also do is one of the great powers of these books is actually, whether you're watching a fictional episode of, Romulans versus the Federation on an episode of Star Trek, or you're actually watching a recreation, we want the other side. We want to understand who we're up against. Can you talk about the people who were on that U-boat?
Yeah, there were 60 Germans on U-505. And it took a special breed of of men to serve on a submarine, particularly a U-boat. First, these cruises, as they called them, would last about 3 months, and life was really hard. They had to store enough food in this incredibly tight space to feed these 60 men to last those 3 months at sea in an impossibly limited amount of space. And at the beginning, they started off with like 2,000 eggs, which had to be consumed in the first 2 weeks of the mission before they started rotting. All the meat was canned, thousands of pounds of potatoes, powdered milk, cheese, etc., and also fresh lemon to prevent the outbreak of scurvy. And there were, like 100 books in the boat's library. Popular music was played over the loudspeaker. There were chess and card games. But the life on board was really, really tough. It was either freezing or steaming hot, depending on where the boat was patrolling. And with a steady kind of drip of condensation that fell on their faces. And, the stench. Can you imagine 60 men in this tightly confined space not having a bath in 3 months? One of the crew members described it as like living in a cold, clammy coffin. There were only 35 bunks because of the limited space, and they all had to be shared so that when your shift started, you popped out of the bunk, and another crewman got in to take to try to go to sleep, and it was called a hot rack. And so the beds were in use 24 hours a day, and the mattresses reeked of body odor, and they actually had what they called foo-foo water, which they sprayed on their bodies to perfumed water to stem the stench. So life was tough, but at the same time, they were highly motivated young Germans. There were a number of committed Nazis on board. Others were signed up because they believed in their country, but a lot of them were rabid Nazis.
Yeah, and what people don't realize too about totalitarian regimes and the whole problem with government. The greatest example of government overreach is political officers on board. It is, if you notice that doesn't happen on American or British ships. There aren't people monitoring, doing stuff, and listening for dissension in the ranks. Anybody who's actually captained a ship, and we have a number of people who listen who have actually had positions of responsibility, but in all branches of the armed services here, know that when you start listening for political opinions inside of your boat, you've lost control of your boat, or you're controlling it in a very, very bad way. There's so much going on here that I kind of want to talk about, but I do want to give people an example of the accessibility of this book and the joy of this book. Towards the first third of it, just to kind of give you guys an example of the prose. A fighter pilot takes aims and drops 2 Mk-47 depth charges. The U-boat throws up heavy anti-aircraft fire. The battle is joined. Back on the Guadalcanal, Gallery is monitoring the engagement via radio communications, eager for good news. All depth charges fell short, the pilot reports. Estimate no damage. Then more disappointing news from the pilot. Sub has submerged again. Next paragraph. But it's not over. The pilot can see the U-boat silhouette. And on it goes. The beginning of the book actually kind of focuses on really, I would call kind of declarative, laying out the map in a verbal fashion of what is going on here. But the further we get into the book, the style very, very carefully begins to change to a much more accelerative newspaper, sort of Hemingway-esque terseness. Can you talk a little bit about the writing and about achieving that sort of accelerative nature without turning the whole book into a series of headlines and beats? Am I making sense, Charles?
You are to me, and I appreciate the critique. It's very much appreciated. Yeah, I think the writing style is what makes the book a unique read. Again, going back to the start of our conversation, you don't want to bore your reader. They've spent X number of dollars to buy the book. They're devoting hours of their free time or listening on audio to this work that you've spent years and years trying to polish and write, and the point is to entertain, but also to give them the facts of a story that really is unique and needs to be told. I mean, I would compare the writing to one of my favorite books. As a teenager, I remember reading this one back in the day, was The Day of the Jackal, which was written by Frederick Forsyth and turned into a great movie and also recently a great miniseries. And I remember thinking to myself, because I always wanted to become a writer / historian, you know, what if you were to be able to write a work of history with this accelerated pace and this drama? It was Day of the Jackal was fiction, but what if you could incorporate some of the techniques that was used in that book into history? Again, standing up to historical scrutiny, making sure even every word of dialogue is based on historical fact, but writing it in that style. So that's what I tried to achieve. Hopefully I came close to it.
Yeah, that's the old Irish saying. It's not so much in the tale, it's in the telling. I mean, the idea that there are a lot of compelling stories out there that if they were simply told properly and in the order they should be told, and that's the whole in media res beginning of the thing, guys, by the way. Like Charles says, he drops you in and then he catches you up because the idea is to pull you along into the action. Charles, I asked this of all history books because, you know, simply the reclamation of Gallery as a heroic figure during World War II in and of itself is enough. But there are bigger, broader things that are meant to be learned from this book in the sense of what the takeaways are. Can you kind of talk about what you're hoping people have a better understanding of, not just the historical moment, but there are some value lessons that play through here? I'm thinking of a couple, but I would love either to be affirmed or to catch the ones that I missed.
Well, I think that's a great question. I think one of the things that struck me was the fact that 3,000 young Americans actually witnessed, not heard about, but actually witnessed the seizure of U-505. And they all recognized how important it was to maintain top-level secrecy. They could not utter a single word of what had happened. And bear in mind, this was one of the great achievements of the U.S. Navy during World War II. But they couldn't say anything to their sweethearts, to their families, parents, friends, family. No one, not a word could be spoken about, because once, if it were leaked, and if it got back, if it was in print, if it got back to the German High Command in Berlin, it's over. The value of the seizure of the Nazi code books and the Enigma machine would be valueless, because all the Nazis would have to do is change the code. So the book taught me an important lesson, which is the value of maintaining your intelligence activities at a top secret level. So no leaks, and also the other interesting fact is, you know, what happened to the German sailors after the seizure. There was one fatality, a couple of injuries during the battle, and what happened was that the POWs were taken to a secluded secret camp in New Orleans, not too far from, in Louisiana, northern Louisiana. And there they were kept in secrecy for the duration of the war, because you couldn't even, their families back in Germany were assuming that they had been lost at sea. But it was only after the end of World War II, when the story could now be told that the boat had been seized and the men were alive, did the families in Germany realize that their men had been captured. So I think the biggest takeaway, going back to your question, is the value of secrecy, which I'm not sure it can be maintained in this day and age with social media and cell phones. Can you imagine 3,000 sailors seeing the seizure of an enemy vessel now? How many phones would come out, and how much leaking would go on? I think a lot.
I mean, it's you know, Benjamin Franklin's old adage that 3 people can keep a secret if 2 of them are dead.
Right.
Nowadays is off the chain. Some of the other things I got from this too is that, you know, and once again, none of this is like done didactically. It's done by simply showing these people, these men in motion and in action. The idea, there are some really incredible value lessons on leadership that kind of play throughout, particularly Gallery, particularly when it comes to Lowe. We learn a lot about about how to kind of handle and not handle men. There's that awful story of Werner Henke. One of the things you want to make sure is that your men don't hate your guts, and that even in the worst of conditions, you don't behave monstrously. That's the word you use with the HMS Ceramic, the sinking of that, and machine gunning the survivors. There are just some incredible value lessons that you can be both an effective and brutal, and at the same time humane commander in the field of conflict. It's available in an audiobook, as you've pointed out. And by the way, the reason I read that, guys, is I want to give you a sense. This book works beautifully on audiobook, and I don't even do half the justice to it that is done in the audiobook. Where can they get that stuff, and where can they find out more about you, Charles?
I would ask people to go on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and any of the great online bookstores. And there it is, Codename Nemo.
And by the way, guys, it's available at the bookstores proper, too. I actually walked by a copy of it just the other day, and I'm like, wait a minute, why do I? Oh, yeah, that's right, I'm reading it. Are you happy with the audiobook? I have to ask that question for the benefit of the men and women out there listening right now.
It's so funny that you bring that up. I am absolutely thrilled at the way that audiobook turned out. That narrator was genius. And the book was actually nominated, one of 5 books nominated for the best audiobook of the year in the history category. So I was so happy that they just did a great job. I can't say enough about that terrific narrator.
By the way, you got some fans out there. Trucker Bosun writes, I don't have 600 audio books, but I do have over 1,100 physical books in my home library. We'll be picking that up. The Paranormal Pie Man wanted me to tell you there's also a video game on Steam called U-Boat where you can captain a U-boat. Trust me, it doesn't have any of the tension of the reality that actually is percolating its way through Codename Nemo. And we are thrilled to welcome Charles Lachman to the show. You're welcome back anytime. Anytime you get a new book out there going, The Hunt for a Nazi U-Boat and the Elusive Enigma Machine. Thank you, Charles. Have the best of Labor Day weekends.
Thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it.